I'm living proof that it's true. That you can move to Bombay with knowing there's like literally zero people, 2 suitcases, and just like a dream in your head and live an extraordinary life. It can happen. I couldn't believe that somebody's paying me 80,000 rupees a month to write this, content. And at that time it seemed like a lot of money. Your co-founders are basically like your family, and you have to have a lot of trust.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky that not just Nashad, but my first co-founder, Mike Melly, has been rock solid. I tell a lot of content creators and bloggers, you don't just start making money from day one. The first few things I did were collabs or barters. I think my first payment was in the form of a pair of Levi's jeans. I think that what happens is, especially in our world of entertainment, is that everything is entertainment and nobody knows where to draw the line.
Welcome to Stree At The Table, where we celebrate women who are not just breaking barriers, but redefining them. Today we have with us Malini Agarwal, one of India's leading digital influencers and an authority on digital brand building. Malini pioneered Indian lifestyle blogging with MissMalini.com, a go-to digital destination for all things Bollywood, fashion, and lifestyle. The blog transformed into Miss Malini Entertainment, where she aimed to create a digital age network for the modern-day brown girl. Malini has a fascinating journey, ranging from being a professional backup dancer, an MC, an RJ, to being named India's most famous blogger by the Huffington Post and Forbes. Today, we will dive into her experiences as a digital creator and entrepreneur. Let's welcome Malini Agarwal to Stree At The Table. Hello, Malini.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us at Stree At The Table.
Thank you for having me.
We are so delighted to have you. And especially because you also, personally for me, you represent a time when, me freshly into college, and then suddenly the advent of MTV and Channel V, and then radio happened. And for us young kids at that time, entertainment took on a very new face.
Yeah.
And suddenly the stars were the RJs and the VJs, and it was just like very different from everything that we were used to before. You are one of the people who was leading that, who was in the thick of it. So I will just begin with asking you, how was it? It was an uncharted territory. How was that time for
Absolutely.
you?
And I think you're absolutely right. I think even for me, out of school and college, I was a professional dancer. That was my first job. And so that was my first brush with entertainment and celebrities. I used to see a lot of these VJs who would host the Pepsi Dance Connection or the Channel V Awards. And they were the cool kids, right? They were the influencers of the 90s. And so actually I moved to Bombay to become a VJ. That was the dream. I walked into the MTV office with my 5 Kodak prints. This is before social media existed. And that was kind of the dream. And I think that, now looking back at the journey, it was really uncharted territory. And all the things that happened, they all seem to make sense now. But at that time, we were kind of sort of flying by the seat of our pants and trying to figure out how to make a mark for yourself, especially when you move to a city like Bombay. They do call it the city of dreams. And I have to say, I'm living proof that it's true. That you can move to Bombay with knowing there's like literally zero people, 2 suitcases, and just like a dream in your head and live an extraordinary life. It can happen.
Yes, and it does, but you have to stick it around. But
Yeah.
a young girl at that time,
Yeah.
how was it? How was the pressure or the support from family, friends, from your surroundings?
I have to say, I was 21 when I moved. And just before I moved to Bombay, I had decided I'm going to run away from home. I was living in Delhi. I got as far as the Machan coffee shop and then realized I had zero plan. Tail between my legs, came home. And then I had a serious conversation with my mom and I said, my very good friend at that time, Natasha Vora, used to live in Bombay and she used to work with Prahlad Kakkar at Genesis. And in hindsight, the fact that she let her 21-year-old daughter pick up and move to a new city, I'm from a Marwari family, and that's pretty unheard of. I have to give her props, and the fact that she had the courage to let me go and add the trust. And I guess she's always lived vicariously through me because she loves Bollywood, and that's always been her dream. And she used to tell me how when she was younger, and she was born in the 40s, right? She used to jump from one terrace to the other, pretending to be this actress Nadia Hunterwali.
Yes,
she was known as Hunterwali.
of course.
And that was her dream. So I guess I'm kind of living that dream for her. But I think for me, I kind of had kind of an unusual childhood. My father was the Indian ambassador. So even though I was born in Allahabad, I grew up all over the world. I have 3 siblings who are much older than me. And my parents really gave me a lot of freedom. Of course, every teenage boy or girl has arguments with their parents about, you don't give me enough freedom. But I think I got enough for the fact that they let me do all the things I wanted to do. The fact that,
Yeah.
they never really batted an eyelid about me choosing to be a professional dancer, which could have also been quite frowned upon.
Absolutely.
So I think from that perspective, I'm very lucky and grateful that I had a more family support than I realized I had.
Yes.
And I probably wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, because I remember when my father retired, and I was that spoiled kid from 0 to 17. The Indian ambassador lives in a fancy house. You drive a Mercedes, you have a swimming pool and a tennis court. And when I moved to Mayur Vihar in Delhi, I remember walking into the house and saying, "Oh, this is so cute. Where's the rest of it?"
Oh
My
boy.
mother said, "Sit down. It's over. There is no pool." And that was my reality check. And then, I went from the American system to going to the British school. I used to take the DTC bus for a 2 rupee bus ticket from Mayur Vihar to Chanikyapuri to go to school. So a lot of, hard lessons and rude awakenings. But I think that all in all, I've had a lot of really good family support, and not just family, my siblings, my friends, a lot of that.
Yeah. There is one thing to have a lot of opposition and do it
Yeah.
in spite of it. There's also a different kind of pressure that comes with having a supportive ecosystem.
Sure.
Especially when you're walking into something that you don't really know what to even say about.
Sure.
Right? How do you, as a young girl, navigate that? And I particularly
Yeah.
ask this because we have so many young people who are venturing into things that they don't really understand.
I think it's interesting because I think I was that borderline generation. We're called Zillennials, right? The ones who lived offline. And I've written about it in my book as well.
Yeah.
Is that, so again, like I said, I had older siblings. My brother's 14 years older than me. My sister's 12 years older than me. And they were always my role models. And my eldest brother, super smart, sold an insurance software company for 6 million Deutschmark, and then moved to Germany. My sister got a full scholarship to Cambridge and was a lawyer. My other brother was in advertising. And my family's pretty academic. So I guess the expectation was always that I would study a lot. And my
Yes.
dream was always to finish high school in Ivory Coast and go to the American University of Paris. But then when my father got posted to Bulgaria, there was no high school for me. So I had to come back to India and then do the British school. And there was no major pressure on me on what to do, but there was no question that I would get a job. My family was not of that bent of mind that just get married and, have someone support you. So, but I don't think there was any overwhelming pressure. I think the expectation was whatever you choose to do it well. And it's very important that you get a good education no matter what you choose to do, because you're going to have to eventually rely on your education. I think that was made very clear from the get-go. Yeah.
So then tell me what happens. You enter radio. And
So
then how
radio
does
happened much.
MissMalini.com,
So
like,
yeah,
from
so
there to
basically,
there.
so it went from being a professional dancer to then, because I had the gift of gab, very often for the dance troupe, I would also be the host. So I would MC and I would dance. And I came to Bombay sort of on a whim to visit a friend. And I loved it so much that I was like, I want to move back. And I think I'd had a really bad breakup as well at the time. So I was like, I want to live a new life. And I think the first thing that happened is there was the first .com boom. I used to work for a company called Activate Technologies. And I sort of wrote the concept note for Chalo Mumbai, which was the website for Midday. So I had set that whole thing up. This is way back. This is like in the year 2000. And then while I was working there, I was looking for other jobs. And I got a job at a company called Asia Content, where I was writing all the romance content for MTVindia.com.
Oh.
So that was my other job. And my business card said channel head, romance and sexuality. And I couldn't believe that somebody's paying me 18,000 rupees a month to write this, content. And at that time, it seemed like a lot of money. And then what happened is private radio just started. And private radio had begun, where there was only two radio, All India Radio. And then suddenly there were auditions for it. And a friend of mine told me, why don't you go? And I went on one lunch break from MTV and I got the job. So I used to work at MTV all day. And then I used to do the graveyard shift from midnight till 4 a.m. at the radio station. And what happened is that after working at Win 94.6 for a while, I moved to another radio station called Go 92.5, which later became Radio 1, which was owned by Midday. So full circle there. And because the newspaper owned the radio station, they gave me a column 17 years ago called Malini's Mumbai, which was written in print.
Yes.
And I remember one day back in 2008 complaining to some friends that, I love writing my column. I write about so much stuff, but then the editors cut it down because there's such little space. And that's when somebody said, hey, why don't you start a blog? And I remember thinking, what's a blog? And he said, it's like this online diary. And I said, but who reads it? He said, don't worry. And I still remember May 5th, 2008, he made me a WordPress login. It was www.wordpress.missmalini.com. And he sent me the login. And I wrote my first little, I used to love using a lot of like the puns in my titles. And I think I'd written about Saif Ali Khan's ex, about Rosa Rosa
Yes,
eating a piece
yes.
of cheese. And it was just like, you look back at all of it, it just seems so unbelievable. And that's how it began. It was all kind of a series of, curious coincidences.
Absolutely. So you've been like the first mover on many things, almost like a path
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
uncharted, and you've been going on that, and now you have a company. Your husband is is sharing leadership space with you there.
Yes.
How how does one navigate
Yeah.
working with one spouse?
Well, we got acquired last year. So after 15 years of working together and running the company together, we can now say all
Done.
baby's grown up and somebody else's responsibility now. I think that it's not always easy, but I think that what I've really enjoyed about working with my husband has been, one, he's also a very unique person, right? A lot of people are very shocked that his Instagram bio says Mr. to Miss Malini, and I'm okay with that. I think he's a very confident guy. He's super intelligent. He used to work in finance. He went to Yale. He went to Harvard Business School, came back to work in finance, and then his dream was to come to India and meet some IIT kids and start a business. And then instead he met me, and the rest is history. I think that in any situation, your co-founders are basically like your family, and you have to have a lot of trust.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky that not just Nashad, but my first co-founder, Mike Melly, has been rock solid. Like, who can say that they've had two co-founders that they can trust with their life for 15 years? And so I've been very lucky that way. Of course, you do end up taking your arguments home. And, normally when you work separate, you have different jobs. There's a lot of empathy that you can complain about things that happen in the office. Here, I can't complain about things that happen in the office because I'll be told, what I'm doing wrong as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think net, it's been incredible. It's been quite a journey.
Tell me some of the ways,
Yeah.
some of the good things that need to be done to ensure that one can stay working and stay married.
I think that, there's no foolproof method. I can't say that I have figured out the formula, but I think the important thing was to have boundaries about how you address each other in the office and how you address each other at home, right? Because there might be, in a relationship that you have one person who's always the one who says sorry, or the other one, the one who's less dramatic. I'm definitely the more dramatic one. No surprises there. And I think he's much more calm. And I think that in a work environment, I have a different work style. I'm much more, I come up with an idea, I take it and I run with it. And I think it's important to have mutual respect, that maybe in a home environment, you might correct someone, but in a work environment, if they're a colleague, you can't take that liberty. So I think we navigated that over the years and learned that. But I think the most important thing, and I think he'll tell you the same, is have different roles, because you have different skill sets. So we never really stepped on each other's toes so much, because for the majority of working together, his was more business end and mine was creative. I'm the networker. I go out, I'm the face of the brand, and he makes, he keeps the lights on. So I think as a result, we make a good team. And then, of course, you have a great mediator and my third business partner. So I think the secret is making sure that you recognize each other's skill sets, and you very often congratulate each other for the hard work that you do. And I think that one of the things I really, have always been careful not to take for granted is the fact that I'm the one who gets to go collect every award on stage, or they say, oh, look, Miss Malini built this brand, but nobody does it alone.
Yeah.
I've had a great team that's done it with me.
Yeah.
And even though, Mike or Nashad didn't get to go up on stage and collect every award, they're as deserving, if not more, of it.
Yeah, and it's beautiful what you're saying, which is
Yeah.
basically, if even in positions of power and in positions of high stress and work, mutually respecting each other's strengths, knowing where boundaries also have to be drawn, because you can't always be right and you can't always be wrong.
And there's always this. I think that I get a lot of strength from both Nashad and Mike. In fact, we were doing 2 years long distance while he was at business school when I started the blog. And what was funny is that he's the one who encouraged me to do it. My plan was that when he finishes business school, I'll move with him to Europe somewhere. Like, why would I stay here? And then because it had taken off, and because in the US, blogs were already big business, like Just Jared, Pop Sugar, Perez Hilton, he's the one who sort of encouraged me to do it. And when I was here, I moved from MTV to Channel V. And I said, I just want to do this full time. And he was the one who was encouraging, but like we had gotten engaged, and he said, I'll support us for the year, sort of jile apni zindagi
How
simran kind of thing.
sweet.
And a lot of that I owe him, because
Yeah.
I would not, and I tell a lot of content creators and bloggers, you don't just start making money from day one. It's not the same as, somebody's paying you a salary. So because of my relationship and because of the support system, I had the liberty to do what I wanted
Yeah.
to do and build it out. Like the first few things I did were collabs or barters. I think my first payment was in the form of a pair of Levi's jeans. So that way I've been very lucky.
Right. And now as you build a team,
Yeah.
when you hire, how do you see the whole there's a lot of conversation on diversity,
Yeah.
on respect of different strengths that different kinds of people bring in. How do you ensure whether, how women are treated, how men are
Yeah.
treated? What's the culture that
So
that
I think
flows through
for
the team?
us, I have a very unorthodox hiring system. I will know within like 4 minutes of talking to you whether or not this is going to work for me. So I don't do a 45-minute interview. And very, very honestly, the first 7 or 8 people I hired at Miss Malini, I hired off Twitter, literally from one like less than 240 character message. Just because it was a new world where I didn't want seasoned journalists. I wanted people to be the consumers, be the creators of the content that are also the consumers, which are like influencers or creators today. That word didn't exist. So I hired people like that, and many of them stayed with me 8 years,
Yeah.
So I think that was my system for it. It just so happened that 90% of my team ended up being women. So we always had more women than guys. And I remember the girls used to complain saying, why can't you hire more boys? There's no boys in the office. And, and again, a lot of people in the offices have rules about relationships in the office. But I mean, I was married to the CEO. So ours was always very, untraditional. But I have to say that I've always been very proud of the fact that we've always been sort of, an empowering office for women. And a lot of girls used to join the company that would first join saying, hey, I can only work for a year or two because then after that, my family expects me to get married.
Yeah.
Would come back and say, hey, now they're seeing that I'm earning my own salary. So they've taken that pressure off. And now they're saying, okay, why don't you work for one more year? And I thought that was amazing. That's true change. I think in the last 15 years, there have been hundreds and hundreds of people who've worked at Miss Malini. And some of them are in great positions now, whether they've moved on to become actors or some have joined like companies like Snapchat and ByteDance. And I think that we definitely throw people into the deep end and say, okay, you get a chance to do anything and everything you want. But it's up to you how much effort you put in and whether you sink or swim.
Yeah.
And I've been very, very lucky that, everyone that sort of worked with us for a couple of years has done really well.
There was a time when there was no social media. There
Yeah.
was not much even happening in media.
Yeah.
Very few people had mics, the access to mics, the access to be able to broadcast.
Sure.
And from that time, where the way women were looked at, treated like was a particular kind of stereotype.
Yeah.
And the stereotype also dictated what is a progressive woman and what is a regressive woman.
Sure.
Usually from
What she's wearing,
what
yeah.
language she uses, what she's wearing, whether she's tied her hair or not,
Yeah.
things like that. And I think with social media, a couple of things have happened. One is we are all visually out there. There is a lot more that we can say, speak.
Yeah.
Everybody has a voice. You can be anonymous and have a voice. It's brought with its wins and its losses, right?
Yeah.
We've gained anonymity, we've lost anonymity. Both
Yeah.
are happening at the same time. However, also what regressive looks like is now very different from what it used to look like before. It is possible that we are dressed progressively, but the way we are treated at home, the way we are treated at work, may be extremely regressive.
Sure.
So it's a very confused
Yeah.
time in that sense, that what you see is not what necessarily may have been happening.
Of course. Yeah.
And you have survived over these decades where the whole perception business has shifted, the media business has shifted. How does one stay relevant? And also you entered this at a time when it was not supposed to be a proper legitimate career or a lucrative. Today it's a legitimate career. We have thousands and hundreds and thousands of young people wanting to make a mark here. So it's an entire stratosphere shift.
Yeah.
How have you been able to navigate it through the
I
years?
think there's a couple of things. I think relevance really comes with understanding what is the need of the hour. What do people really need? I think for me, when I started off, my thinking came from the idea that I love Bollywood, I love fashion, I love entertainment. But when I moved back to India after, in like I was like now 18, 19 years old. There was no one place that I could go to find all the things I love, like all the pop culture magazines I would see abroad. Only they had just started doing the Vogues and the L's and all of that. And I was like, so where's the gap? Where is that personal opinion about things? Right now, all you would see is the Bollywood dump of celebrities in front of a checkered background, but what is their life really like?
Yeah.
So it comes from servicing a need. People are curious about these things. Um, the way to stay relevant, I think, has been is to continue to adapt. So while we started off as a blog and I was known as a blogger, we changed very rapidly to being present on every social media platform. So if you look at us compared to other media, you would find our presence on everything from Snapchat to Pinterest to Facebook. And
Yes.
when Clubhouse started, we were the first on Clubhouse.
Yes.
Now TikTok is now also banned in the US. Something new will start. I think it's called Lemonade. So I'm going to get on that. So I was always good to adapt to new platforms and be platform agnostic. I'm also very good at building communities. So one of the things that I tried to combat with social media, where suddenly there was influx of so much trolling or people saying creepy things. When Facebook came, said, because I'd been working with them from the day one, they're like, okay, why don't you start a group or a community? So I said, instead of starting a community on fashion or Bollywood, I decided to start a women's community called Girl Tribe. And I just added 100 girls I know. And now there's almost 100,000 women in that community. And there's about 200 comments every 12 minutes of people just engaging with each other in a very healthy, supportive way.
Yeah.
And very rarely will you see someone being negative in that space. And again, similar to that, when everyone was just writing about Bollywood and I saw this rise in content creator influencer, we launched something called Miss Malini Trending, which was an influencer news desk where we would cover social media stars the way we cover Bollywood celebrities, and nobody else was doing that. And similarly, again, I realized the need for the hours that now there's about 1.52 million content creators in India.
Yeah.
Aspiring creators. So I was like, okay, what can we do next? So I started something called the Miss Malini Creator Squad to say, look, I have the experience. You want to become creators, let me create a community for you. And now we create little masterclasses, boot camps, and experiences for that. So it's really about seeing what is the need from the consumer perspective.
Yeah.
And also, if there are 1.5 million people who want to be like you, then the silly thing would be to keep serving the same dish, right? So I think being relevant is about understanding how the world is changing. Now, tomorrow with AI, with new technology, with ChatGPT, so much is going to evolve. So I think staying relevant is about being aware of what people want, what the new generation wants. I'm 47. Like, I wouldn't think of myself as today's generation, but I can safely say that I can very easily have a conversation with today's generation because I never adopted this thought that, oh no, I'm too old for this or I don't understand it.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people stop evolving when they say, I don't get it. And I think I love this. My mom is 85 and she's on Facebook and Instagram.
Now with millions of people, wanting to be creators, wanting to be in the public eye, from the outside, we see that women creators, content creators have it much harder than male content creators. They're up for trolling.
You think so?
That's what it seems like to observers. What is your experience of being a content creator?
I mean, I think that I don't think it's so much about women creators have it harder or have it easier. I think there's more women who are creating content in these fields of beauty, fashion, lifestyle, all of that, right? So I think that there's trolling that happens to men and women both. I think that a lot of guys feel that they may not get as much attention as a creator as a woman would because, okay, you can put on a thirst trap, a sexy outfit, and you'll get the views, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's not easy for anyone. I think the ones that have really stood out are the ones that resonated with an audience, right? So if you look at even how well Kusha Kapila and Project Flower, a lot of these creators have done is because they had a unique voice or a niche and a talent, clearly a talent that allowed them a path or entry into entertainment that they would never on their own have had.
Absolutely.
Right? I think I loved the fact that they made that movie, Thank You for Coming, and there was so many content creators as actors in it who probably would never even have had the wherewithal or the confidence or the ability to come and audition for a film like that. So it's become a lot more democratic.
No, but if you just pick up, you just mentioned Kapila, Kusha Kapila, and the fact that an episode of A Personal Life became a household conversation,
I
spoken
think
about
that
very
that's
disrespectfully.
par with the course for any celebrity. If you look at it, like even what's happening with Saif Ali Khan today, look at how people are approaching it. I don't think it has anything to do with his gender.
All right.
So I think if you look at it that way, I think that if you're in the public eye, yes, for sure, there are, like, for example, what happened with Rhea Chakravarti, definitely there was so much more slut shaming because she's a woman, for sure. But I think that what happens is, especially in our world of entertainment, is that everything is entertainment and nobody knows where to draw the line. As consumers, it's almost a voyeuristic, it's almost cannibalistic, almost in
Yes.
the consumption of other people's misery. There's a
Yes.
German word for it called Schadenfreude, where you take joy in someone else's misery. And unfortunately, entertainment has become that, because it's also what a lot of people serve up. So one of the rules we made at Miss Malini years ago is we will never write anything we can't say to your face. And that automatically changes a lot about what you say.
That's a beautiful value principle.
Yeah, and that, you wouldn't think of that as a value principle you can apply to entertainment or Bollywood, but
Yeah.
I have to say it worked quite successfully, in fact, because you can still entertain people without building them up and tearing them down. And you can still entertain and delight people by doing things that people want to see. So, for example, I remember very clearly an incident when they were doing interviews for Happy New Year. And this is when, bloggers or websites would get the last slot. So I
Yeah.
think my slot was 7 p.m. and I got my turn at 4 in the morning. But I'm like, I'm not leaving. It's a Shah Rukh Khan interview. And there was some other website before us. And the only thing he went up and asked Shah Rukh Khan was, आपके बारे पे सलमान खान ने ट्विटर पे क्या बोला, आपको कैसा लगा? And Shah Rukh said, what you don't know about, don't ask. Interview over. I'm like, this guy waited 9 hours to piss off Shah Rukh Khan. Meanwhile, we had gone with cupcakes and we made them play charades. And you saw Shah Rukh Khan acting out Bluff Master for Abhishek Bachchan to guess. Now, you normally don't see them do
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So again, coming back to the fact that being entertaining or delighting an audience doesn't necessarily need to be the very, I think, unimaginative route of let's tear them down or look at the gossip or look at something negative. Because let's be honest, everyone loves gossip or everyone wants to hear
Yeah.
who's sleeping with who or who did what or kya hua, right? But
Yes.
can you be creative enough to find a more interesting way to entertain people? And I can say, yes, you can.
Yeah. So interesting and not so disrespectful.
And it doesn't need to be disrespectful at all. I'm saying that you don't, the only thing that is interesting about celebrities doesn't have to be their love life or their misery or what's going wrong in their lives. It could be something as fun as watching them do something you do with your friends. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's quite delightful to see how Shah Rukh Khan and Abhishek Bachchan would play charades together because it's so relatable.
Yes.
But why is it that most people have never thought to do that with them, but rather ask them slightly invasive questions?
Yes.
And I think that's the difference. It's about using your imagination and saying, okay, how can I still get my viewership without resorting to what people have maybe been doing all along? Like, be fresh
Absolutely.
about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You also said that social media has democratized everything and you don't need to be born into wealth or have connections anymore.
Oh.
Tell me a little more about this.
I mean, I think so. I'll give you my example, right? I'm not related to anyone in the film industry. I don't have a ton of money. I lived a really fancy life because of the Indian Foreign Service when we had it. So if you're saying that the only way to make it in this industry is to sleep with someone or have a connection, I can say that's not true because I did it myself, right? Now, I don't have an issue against, I know there's a big conversation about nepotism and nepo babies. And I think in any field, a parent will want to give their child a leg up, right? If you look at any industrial, look at
Yeah.
every big, family that is of a wealthy H&I family here. It's their children who are inheriting their business. Right? I guess the same thing is happening in entertainment. But I think that social media has allowed content creators to find an audience for themselves where you're not just being fed the same people over and over again through the films or through the casting, because suddenly you can go online and on Instagram, you choose your adventure.
Absolutely.
So how did someone like a Prajakta or a Kusha or any of these people become famous, or Tanmay Bhatt for that matter? They didn't have a connection to do it. They just had a platform
Yes.
that allowed anyone to consume their content.
and
that
they brought
means it
their
was
authentic self.
their authentic style. And that means that there is enough of an audience out there that given the chance, that audience had a choice to either go and watch what they have been seeing again and again anyway and only support that,
Yeah.
or could go see someone new and build them up. And that's where the democracy of it
Yeah.
comes through. You choose your adventure. You choose what you put eyeballs to. Like,
Yeah.
for example, one of the things that we made a rule about, because clickbait has changed over the years, right? It used to be who's doing what, and celebrities weren't as easily accessible, right? If you look back
Yeah.
to the times of Madhuri Dixit or Sri Devi, how much did you really know about them? How often did you even see them?
Yeah.
Because people didn't have phone cameras. You would have to wait and get a photographer and all of that, right? But now this evolution has also become a, kind of a scary degradation where people don't just do celebrity spotting, like an airport spotting, they'll do funeral spotting. Like
Yeah.
who died and who came to the funeral. And I think
Yeah.
that's horrible.
Horrible.
But there are people watching that content. So who's to blame, right? Is it the person who's taking the picture and posting it, or is the person who's created
Viewing
an
it.
audience for it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there's a great documentary that I think Al Jazeera had done, and they had interviewed me about as well, that you can blame the paparazzi all you like, but there's an audience that's consuming it.
Yeah.
If everyone said, no, I don't want to see this, then the paparazzi would have no one to sell the pictures to.
Absolutely.
And it's not just in India. This is the same logic of why Princess Diana was chased to her literal death.
Yeah, yeah. We are feeding the monster.
We are feeding the monster, and we are the monster.
We are the
It's
monster.
a
Yes.
combination. But I think then what's the solution to it? We can sit and complain. And my friend Ridge, he's also an influencer, King of Clubs, said this so well. He said, we all talk about the toxic internet and, the internet is so bad and horrible. And, but the internet is not some alien nation that showed up and now we have to deal with them like District 9 and some new, alien race. The internet is us. We are the internet. So we are the toxicity, and we have a choice to be the ones that fix it. So we can also be the antidote. So I think what we've tried to do, at least at Miss Malini, is flood the internet with positivity. And I always tell people, like, if I told you that the most valuable currency in the world is positivity, today, how much are you worth online?
Right. Amazing. So that is your authentic voice.
Yes.
That has helped you scale your brand.
I think so. And I think, I've learned a lot. I wrote my second book, Under the Influence, on this topic very much so, to say that I've realized that I made a lot of my own mistakes. It's not like I knew everything from the get-go. And so I've unpacked my journey from that perspective of what are the mistakes I made and what would I have done differently. And I realized that, we all jumped online just, thinking the internet is just this playground and it's not real life. But I think things like the pandemic made us realize how much our virtual reality is our reality. And we are the last generation that knows a life without the internet.
Yes.
And now generation 2025, generation beta has begun,
Yeah.
which will live an even more immersive, even more digital life. So where is the guidebook, on how to live online?
Yeah.
From everything to like cooking a dish, to using a microwave, to driving a car, comes with like a 40-page manual. I've never seen anyone hand even a piece of paper to someone saying, before you go online, read this. So I think that's where I came from, the perspective of writing that book, to say, like, what are the do's and don'ts?
Yeah. What are the do's and don'ts?
Are you asking?
Yeah.
Read my book. And there's a lot of them. I think the main one is really, again, I've sort of divided it into those three things, is that never write anything, and not just as a journalist, never write anything that you wouldn't say to someone's face, even if you're commenting. Because very often you'll see someone will leave a mean comment on your post, or you might think of writing something cruel back because you don't know who they are. Because, everything, until you think of someone as a human being, it's all fun and games, right? So I think it's really important to look at the other person online as a human being and not a number count. The problem is because, and Facebook didn't start with the likes as a competition. It was supposed to spread positivity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Farmville.
yeah, we were meant to sort of spread love and positivity, but now it's become a competition. And I saw this post the other day, which I put up, saying that the internet has us believing that 20 likes is not enough. But what if 20 people came up and said, I love something about you? That would feel great.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people to think about the online world more like real life. And so when you engage with people, behave the way you would in real life. And if you notice something, and I realized this as I was processing my book, is that right now what we do is we put up a post and we want people to love us and we wait for that number to go up. We don't even know who those people are, whose number count that is. And as soon as they write something, our response is usually a heart or a thumbs up, and or something that immediately ends that conversation. We don't want to invest any more of our time to
Engaging.
actually have a conversation. And this is called the Dunbar theory, which I talked about, that the internet has become low stakes connections. So I think it's important to try to have a high stakes connection online and give of yourself as much as you want in return. I think the other really important thing to do online is to understand that, you are adding fuel to the fire, whether it's good or bad, right?
Yeah.
Now, what are you putting online? You might say, and I saw this great piece of, somebody had put up a post saying, people think of this word influencer as like such a great thing, but influence is not always a great thing. When you're under the influence, You could be inebriated, right? Or you could have influenza when you're sick. Think about that when people come to visit your social media. Do they leave feeling better or worse than when they came?
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's a very important thing, especially if you are now just showing a curation of your perfect moments in your perfect life. Nobody's life is perfect. And I think the most important, the other thing, which is something I took out of Mary Kondo's concept of sparking joy, is, for one, yes, hold on to the things that spark joy for you.
Hmm.
But most importantly, what can you do that will spark joy for someone else?
Yeah.
And there's a great line from a film that I've quoted so many times, which says, there's 7 billion people, now 8 billion people on the planet. So, what does one life really mean?
Hmm.
So, in a marriage or a friendship or even online, you're saying, I'm going to be there for the good, the bad, the ugly. Your life will not go unnoticed because I will notice it. Your life will not go unwitnessed because I will be your witness. And that's what social media is, a double dab, a heart, a comment, something like it's someone saying, I see you, your life matters,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Absolutely.
the most important advice I can give anyone is be a good witness and think about what you're making other people witness.
Wow, that's cool. In different parts of the many years, you've been in different positions of leadership. You've done
Yeah.
different things. What are some of the lessons that you would wish, people kind of imbibed as they went on their own leadership journey, and especially women? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on more
Yeah,
women-related
sure.
questions as well. But
I think that a couple of things stand out to me. I remember when I was working at MTV and I was, at that point I had like multicolored streaked hair, and I used to wear like my own style of clothes, and I was sitting in a boardroom with a bunch of guys, and I remember being my own worst enemy by thinking that I don't belong here. Nobody said I don't belong there.
hmm,
Nobody said anything. But I just assumed that, oh no, I'm a girl. I don't belong in a boardroom with a bunch of people. What am I doing here? So I was, and it's Wendy Clark, who's the ex creative director of DDB Mudra, one of the biggest
hmm,
ad
hmm,
agencies in the world, told me this. She said, everyone, and especially women, live with this roommate in their head, who is their naysayer,
hmm.
that you can't do it, the imposter syndrome, you don't belong here, you're not good enough. And she said, what you have to do is, before you leave the house every day, is separate yourself from that voice. And remember that that voice is just another version of you that you nurture and take care of, but that does not define you. And I think the best thing I learned from my own experience is, they say fake it till you make it. Even if you don't have the confidence, project the confidence and it will come. If you believe in something and you have a gut instinct about it, follow your gut instinct.
Hmm.
Be willing to say you're sorry if you make a mistake. Listen more than you talk. I still struggle with this one. Um, and I think that, value the people who have been there with you. You can't do anything alone. And I really pride myself on the connections and relationships I've made and the partnerships I've made. And I think it's very important to give credit where it's due. I think women have, historically always suffered from not being given credit,
Yeah.
enough credit.
Yes.
And so it's very important, especially as a woman in business, to give credit to the people who deserve it,
Yeah.
whether men or women. Both.
Absolutely. No, you're making such an important point, and my
Yeah.
earlier question about women content creators actually came from there as well.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of women who are putting themselves out there are doing it in spite of the way we've been raised, because unfortunately the dinner table as well as the playground has not changed much. And so there is an audacity, there is a role modeling that folks like you are doing, that is getting them to come put their
Sure.
voices out. To find their independent identity is a tough
Yeah.
one. Then to be trolled maliciously breaks a lot of very, very strong souls as well.
Sure.
And that's why the question that on the other side of this, not as a viewer, what is life like for a woman content creator?
I think it's tough. It's lonely. I think there's a lot of pressure. I think that, the expectation to always look perfect and be like literally like have zero pores on your face kind of
Yeah.
life. There used to be this, pressure on Bollywood celebrities a lot, right? As well. So it's not easy to do, but I have to say, I think a lot of content creators and women are very resilient. They're strong and they also speak up about their emotions. So if you just see even Masum Minawala put up a great post about her
Yes.
experience now and what it's like having, a second
But
child.
isn't this a strange thing that there is the trolling just gets worse? Not maybe for the same person, but it's not like women calling out is making this, kind of like bringing this down.
Yeah.
There is malicious trolling, and then there is more trolling.
Yeah.
And women are not simply trolled for their intellect or what they're saying, but for how they're looking,
Yeah.
their wrinkles,
So I
the
mean, I
wrong
think if
shade
you
of
see what the
lipstick.
movie that's going to probably win an Oscar and won the Golden Globes with Demi Moore, Substance, is that the biggest problem is that women are just trained from childhood to look a certain way, and
Absolutely.
then when you stop looking a certain way, then you're written off, which is the ageist thing as well.
Yes.
And this is an age-old issue. This is nothing to do with just content creators.
Yeah.
This has just been the way
No,
that women
content
are.
creator,
Yeah.
because I specifically ask about this because there is a spotlight.
Yeah.
It's hard for all women, I would say, even
Yeah.
even women who don't work, as
Yeah.
soon as a
Sure.
post midlife,
Of
it is
course.
hard. And especially in our country, there is one of the ways of greeting is to either say, oh, you've grown fatter or
Yeah,
thinner
yeah.
or darker or fairer.
Sure. It's
Or
always a physical.
it's a very
yeah, comment.
physical
Yeah.
comment that will come almost immediately after
Yeah.
saying hello.
Yeah.
So it is a part of our lives. Everybody deals with it. But when I say content creators or even actors or people who are in performing arts in the public eye, they're in the visual medium. They're
Yeah.
out there. They're putting themselves out. Their vulnerabilities, and it's hard
Yeah.
in a world where you can't make a single faux pas.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it's hard. I think that that's the thing that has to change. And it's the fact that it's 2025 and we're still having to have this conversation is quite sad.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that we have to really work on. And I think that there's a great book called The Power. I don't know if you've read it. It's a story about how, what if we lived in a world where suddenly women developed the ability to create like a lightning bolt from their fingers, and suddenly men were scared, and suddenly, and it writes the whole book from the
Yeah.
perspective of how men now have to cover their ankles, or men can't travel without. And what I thought was really telling is that the beginning on the chapter, because it's told from this like sort of post-apocalyptic view, it says men's writer society and writer society, where normally it's always
Women's
and
writer
women.
society.
So I thought that was really telling. Like even this, I really struggled with the idea of being on Impact's top 50 women's list as opposed to overall. But my husband actually had a good point about this, is that the balance is so skewed of more men in
Yeah.
positions of power that if it was a common list, women wouldn't even get a chance.
Women wouldn't get a
So
chance.
I think it's slowly changing with conversations like this, and I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work around it. But I think the people who will be the most effective in making this change are the men, because the women can talk about it as much as they like,
Yeah.
but men will be the best role models for other men. And I think there's something to be said about, there's a lot of great men out there who are doing
Absolutely.
and pulling their weight, and I don't know if they get enough props.
Yeah. And the fact that if we have to take space, somebody has got to make space for us
Yeah,
as
of
well. And it's a
course.
crowded world.
Yeah.
And men who are allies of women have
Yeah.
a special place in heaven, according to me.
Yes.
But in this there are many times you've done really well, and there must obviously have been
Of
the lows
course.
of the lows.
Yeah.
Would you like to share any of that, and how?
I think for me, the way I look at it, without the bitter, the sweet isn't as sweet. I mean, there's so many different kinds of lows, right? Emotional, physical, mental. I think for me, the biggest learning of the lows has been that who was around when that happened and how you pulled yourself back up from the trenches. And I think a great example of, if you see what's happening now in LA, where houses are literally burning to the ground,
Yeah.
is that we put so much value on materialistic things, but at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, we all know you come alone, you go alone,
Yeah.
right? And we spend so much time collecting things and accolades, but what really matters are your experiences. I literally have a tattoo of it on my ribs. It's from a movie that says, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return.
How beautiful. Something you said earlier is stuck in my
Yeah.
head, which is, we make these rules on the dinner table and the playground.
Yeah.
As the new generations come in, and how do we fix it? If there is any fixing to be done.
I think that the great thing about the human race and the resilience is the generations sort of autocorrect themselves. So just like our parents used to worry about how will we manage. We managed. I think the next generation is so much more aware. I'll give you a small example. I remember growing up, I'm sure you did too, that if you went to buy a pad, if you had your period,
Yeah.
you would hide it. You
Yeah.
would be embarrassed. Even to like 5-7 years ago, if I asked someone for a tampon, I would take it, I'd hide it in my pocket.
Yeah.
And if it fell on the floor, I'd be mortified. Why? Why are we so terrified, even as women are so embarrassed of the idea that we menstruate? I mean, that's the circle of life. Today's generation has no such. And I think this generation is going to fix itself. It'll course correct itself, just like there is a lot of corrections that happen. If you already see the difference between our generation of parents, like us as parents, like I don't have children, but my best friend
Yeah,
has, for
yeah.
example, four,
Yeah.
is a very different parent and very different behavior than to what our parents would say, where don't make a scene, sit like this. Today's parents are not telling their daughters this what at all.
But there is a conscious correction.
There
This
is a
it's
conscious
not,
correct,
it's
but
not
I'm saying it's
accidentally
going to. I'm
happen.
going to say, but what I'm saying is that over time it's going to become subconscious. The Gen Alpha and Beta today, it will not even occur to them that I have to raise my children equally.
Okay, I have a point here,
Yeah.
and a slight contradiction
Sure.
because see, the fact is, while and I bracket you into you and me. I mean, we born in the same year, by the way. So we've grown into a different class of income as well,
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is absolutely true
Yeah.
to the truth of the class of income we belong to.
You know what? I'll disagree with you, because if you're talking about, when we're talking about trolling and behavior, if you see what happened in the boys' locker room,
Yeah.
it was all wealthy kids.
Absolutely.
It had nothing to do with lack of education. And the internet,
Absolutely.
people who have access to the internet have some means. So I would say that our biggest mistake is to think that this only happens in the villages.
No, it's
Yeah.
it's not that. I mean the hesitation and the example that
Yeah.
you gave about the sanitary pad. The
Yeah.
fact is that there is an a sense of ownership for one's sexuality, visibly,
course, yeah.
vocally,
Yeah.
and out there.
I mean, this is a much larger debate. Our country is, like Virda has said, very vast.
very
There's two
vast,
different.
very vast.
So, I mean, I could not ever presume to comment on the larger part
Yeah.
of the country, because I'm too ignorant about that life.
yeah,
I'm very well aware that they have very different issues and problems.
yeah,
And I think that for them, that some of the just the livelihood or the day to day is much harder than we
Yeah,
could even
yeah.
imagine. Like, we would not survive a day without air conditioning.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think I wouldn't even want to comment on that or try to belittle that or try to equate. There's no one size solution fits all. I think the solution for larger, more impoverished India is very different than a
Yeah.
solution for me and you and our issues. I think our
Absolutely.
problems are also very different.
Absolutely. No, what I love about everything that you've been saying today is that it holds true to something you said much earlier, which is you shouldn't write what you can't
Say to someone's
say
face.
to someone's face. And what it also translates into, you shouldn't say something that you cannot back with your own actions. And you've been candid, you've
Yeah.
been honest.
Thank you.
You've also owned up when you didn't know something. I mean, it's just been a
Yeah.
joy talking
I think
to
the
you.
greatest confidence I've achieved in my life is that when someone says, "Hey, did you see this?" If I haven't seen it, I'll say I haven't seen it. I won't pretend anymore.
But you
And you
know
learn
how
something
rare
new.
that is, right?
Yeah, but you as a result, you learn something new and you give somebody an opportunity to tell you about something that maybe you don't know.
No. Thank you, Malini. We've
you.
learned so much from
Thanks
you,
for
and
having me.
I'm so sure the listeners will feel the same way.
I hope so.
Thank you for
Thanks.
joining us. It's
Thanks
been an
for having me.
absolute pleasure. Thank you.